and welcome to Race to Your Career. In this episode, we'll be speaking about training and development and focusing in on the early careers programmes on offer. Okay, so Ellie and Molly, if you can start off by explaining your current roles for me. Molly?
So I'm currently employed by the National Stud. My role here is nominations assistant and client communications. So the role of nominations involves basically selling our stallions. So a big, I suppose, task of that is marketing the stallions to all the potential breeders. And obviously they're dotted all around the country, so it's really getting our stallions out there. And then client communications is dealing with all of the clients of the stud. So anyone who comes and boards their horses here, whether it's spellers, mares in for foaling or covering, just updating them on how their horses are doing throughout the season.
With marketing the studs, what's the main selling points that people are looking for?
So a lot of breeders have different goals. So people are either breeding to sell, so at the sales in, let's say, October or December, or else they're breeding to race. So each stallion offers, I suppose, a different product of the horse. So if you want like a quicker kind of horse, maybe to run over sprint races, you look at one of our horses, Horseracing, or if you want kind of a more longer distance, tough, tenacious racehorse, you might go for our new recruit, Stradivarius. So it's just trying to tailor each of our stallions' unique, also selling point, and getting that out to potential clients.
And would you say one of the kind of most important skills that you have to have is that communication?
Yeah, communication's a big thing, and just being open and transparent. So that's a huge skill, I suppose, I've developed since I've come off the development program. So that was a huge development skill that I've learned and I'm still developing through the course of my career here.
Fantastic, thank you, Molly. And Ellie, tell us about your role.
Hi, so I'm currently communications manager at Rodgers. Been there since September, so still fairly new into the role, but basically I sort of act as a go-between between Roger and the owners, so relaying communications from Roger, updates, etc. So there's a lot of sort of filming and editing videos of the horses, just so people can see how they're progressing physically. I also manage the content on the website, so say for example if we have a winner on the racetrack, I'll write a news story for that, so just making sure there's a constant feed of updated and new information on there for people to see, and also keeping the social media up to date as well. So I'd sort of say those are the main parts of my role. And then obviously in the yard, if ever we have owners come and see their horses, I'll sort of host them in the yard as well. So yeah, again, it's a really varied role, very communications based obviously, but yeah, really enjoying it so far.
It is very varied, like you mentioned there.
Yeah.
What's your favourite element of what you do?
I think I really love meeting the owners. I think that's something that's been new to me in this role. Before I joined Rogers, I was at Darley, which is another stud, working in marketing there. So I've sort of always had that communications background, but this element of sort of meeting the owners is new to me in this role, and that's something I'm really enjoying, definitely.
So, as you mentioned earlier, Molly, you both completed the British Horseracing Development Programme, but you've both ended up with very different roles. Talk to me about doing an early careers programme. What made you want to do that step? Molly?
So coming from a predominantly stud-based background, I wanted to kind of delve deeper into the industry. We're so lucky that it's such a broad industry. I thought this was the perfect opportunity just because there was so many options for the placements. But the one that stood out to me was the National Stud one. So yeah, I applied around this time last year actually. I remember filling out all my forms and applications and reading my CV while on full watch. So it was a great process and everything, and just getting it all up to date. And the questions that they asked you, like what do you want to do in this industry, like how do you think you could benefit from it, really I suppose took you back and made you realise, okay, this is actually what I want to do in my career in the industry. So it was a great opportunity. I'd recommend it to anyone.
How you said there about the application process and having to think about what it would do for you sounds like quite a cathartic experience. Was it, or was it quite stressful?
It was quite stressful because, well, I suppose when you're faced with that question, you kind of panic and you're kind of like, oh God, I don't know what to do, because it's so broad. But at the end of the day, I always knew it was kind of along the stud side of things I wanted to stay in, just I suppose broaden my experience in it. So anything to do within the office, because I was mainly out on the yards. So, and it did exactly what I wanted it to do. So,
with it being stressful, was there support on offer?
Yeah, there was great support on offer. The website was very clear on all the frequently asked questions. And then when it came on further to like the interview process, everyone there was really helpful and they answered all the questions, because obviously I was coming from abroad, so if there were any issues there, but it was all handled really, really well. It was very easy, but I suppose I probably just made it a stressful process.
Probably put a bit of pressure on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ellie, tell us about your experience. How did you find out about the development programme?
So I think I actually just saw it advertised online and on social media. I suppose I'm slightly different to you in that you were already sort of working in the industry. I think I'd grown up riding and I grew up with horses, so I had that love there. Had an interest in racing, but actually at the time I'd been to uni, I'd done a degree in psychology, and to be honest, I'd sort of fallen into working in marketing because I wasn't really too sure what I wanted to do. So I think while I was in that role in marketing, I saw this development program, advertised. And obviously I'd always had this interest in horses and racing, and I thought, oh, that's, really interesting. So for me, it was a great sort of bridge into the industry. I'd sort of done a little bit of stud work in summer holidays, but nothing, significant. So it was a great sort of stepping stone into the industry for me, having done a degree outside of it. And then, just applied, went through the application process. It was one of those that the more I learned about it, the more interested I got, because I think I'd never really, until that point, considered a career in racing. I don't think I knew sort of the depth and the breadth of careers available. And I think even just looking through the placement list on the course, it was a really good indicator of the depth of careers available. So, to have gone from that point and now I'm sort of working in marketing and communications in the industry, which I love. So, for me, it was a great sort of stepping stone into the industry from having not been too sure what I wanted to do before.
Are there different levels? Because you mentioned you've got your degree that you'd previously acquired. What if people didn't have a degree? Can they still do it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, it's a development programme. So a lot of people on my course did have a degree. Not all of them did. Some of them were sort of more mature. People that had perhaps already worked in the industry and they wanted to step into a different area. I don't know about the people on your course, but it was definitely very varied on mine.
Yeah, no, mine was very diverse. We had a lot of people who were just involved with sports, who had a love of sports and wanted, I suppose, to gain knowledge on the thoroughbred industry and the racing industry as a sport. We more mature students as well, who I think, like Belupe, he had a much fonder interest environmental side of things and like the sustainability of horse racing, which was fascinating to hear his insights on it, because I suppose when you've been involved for something so long, you're kind of almost blindsided to these things. So it's great to hear other people's opinions. And that was the same with everyone else on the course. We all came from such different backgrounds. It was really interesting. You learned probably just as much from the course curriculum than you did off your fellow peers. So that was really eye-opening.
Well, that's really good to be surrounded by different people. You mentioned Ellie having a background in horse riding. Molly, off camera, you also said that you did. Were there people who didn't?
Definitely in my class there was a lot of people, again, just interested in sport as a whole. A lot came from kind of football colleges. Others had keen interest in journalism and sports journalism, so wanted to broaden their interest in racing. We had other people who like to present, who had done a few presenting programs. We had a daughter of a horse trainer. So it was varied. It was great though.
So Ellie, let's break down the kind of application process in more detail, because we have touched on it, the interview and things. So what do you actually need to do once you see the ad on social media, online, wherever, and you think, oh yeah, I want to do that?
So when I did it, I applied through Careersinracing, which is where I saw it advertised. Through that, you had to answer a number of questions, which was sort of the assessment form, and also attach a CV. So that was sort of the first stage of application. After that, I was lucky enough to be invited to the assessment centre, which was down in London. And I think they ran a few assessment centres, so there was a group of about 15, 20 of us on mine. And yeah, it was sort of half a day. You did various sort of group-based tasks. You had an interview as well, so it was quite a varied day. But yeah, again, like you said, I think you were well supported through the whole process. I think, you know, it gave everyone a chance to show their strengths. You know, I would say it's a very thorough application process.
And then you have your interview, then you get a phone call or email?
Yeah, exactly.
And then what happens?
So then I can't remember how long there was in between the interview and starting the course, but yeah, I got a call off Michelle. When you do the interview and the application, you state your areas of interest. So, you know, for me that was sort of marketing, social media, communications. And then Michelle and the team at Careersinracing, if you get offered a place, you get offered your placement at that point. So I got a call off Michelle, and I was lucky enough to get a placement with the British Horseracing Authority Industry People and Development team, which is actually sort of where Careersinracing is based as well, with the British Horseracing Authority. So yeah, you get a call and you get told this is the placement we'd like to offer you, and then obviously you accept, and then yeah, once you've accepted, then you're on the course, which starts at the British Racing School in Newmarket.
So you mentioned Michelle a lot there. Is she in charge of recruitment?
So Michelle is the programme manager.
Brilliant. So she's the one who liaises with students coming on the course.
Yeah.
Molly, was your process different to that Ellie described?
It was very similar. I was kind of getting flashbacks there from it. I suppose I'm more recent. I only did it last year. So yeah, I remember hopping on a plane in Dublin and flying over to London for the day to go to the assessment centre in London. Kind of met everyone. We all introduced ourselves, our, I suppose, aspirations or what we've done in the industry. So yeah, that was really interesting. And then yeah, the group work was great. We had to make a horse out of marshmallows and spaghetti sticks. So yeah, it was definitely something I've never done before. But yeah, I suppose how we worked in teams was a big indicator on how we would get on. And then we had our interviews, and then we had more kind of team-based assessments, and also the English and kind of maths kind of tests. They were interesting, but it was well worth it. It was a great experience, even if I wasn't successful in the application. Just the experience itself was really helpful.
Why were those tests interesting?
Oh gosh, speaking for myself anyway, the maths one was quite difficult. I haven't had to do anything like that in a while, so I was kind of, it brought me back to my school days, and just kind of being like, oh my gosh, don't remember any of this, but it was good fun.
And was it quite daunting moving from Dublin?
Not really, because I've done a lot of travel. Like I spent almost a year in America when I was in university, so I suppose moving wasn't really an issue, and I've always been so keen to travel and kind of, I suppose, force myself into new cultures and learn everything like that, so it wasn't too daunting for me. But again, the support from the Careersinracing team was brilliant, so I my transition here was pretty seamless.
Ellie, previously you mentioned having to submit a CV. Mm-hmm. What do you think people should do to stand out on that CV? What experience is good to have?
It's hard to say really, because I think, like we touched on, people came from such varied backgrounds. So again, I would just say making sure you've shown the breadth of your experience. I think it's quite good to outline your areas of interest and which areas you think are your strengths. Because I just think it helps. It helps the team build a bigger picture of you and what you're looking to do, and it helps them, if you are successful in getting on the course, helps them sort of get you on the placement that they think is really going to be in your line of interest, and sort of will help you with your career progression, which I suppose is the aim of the course really.
And in terms of the development programme itself, the British Horse Racing Development Programme, can you break it down in its simplest form, what it actually is and who it's good for?
So it starts with a 2-week course at British Racing School, which is an incredible 2 weeks. It's basically 2 weeks of lectures and visits, and you hear from pretty much every area of the industry, I would say, and you get to do amazing visits like going out to Dalham Hall and up to Tattersalls, and we went racing. So it's really sort of quite an intense whistle-stop tour of the racing industry, which is wonderful. I think, like we touched on, people come with such a variety of backgrounds. So whereas there might be some people that are already pretty au fait with the breeding side, they might not know about handicapping or race planning, all these areas. So that's really great, and it sort of brings everyone together as a group as well, and sort of really bond you because you all stay at the racing school at that time, and it's really good fun 2 weeks. And then after that, everyone goes off and does their individual placements, and you do an 8-week placement. So I went off down to London, and I was based with the British Horse Racing Authority down there for 8 weeks. And I suppose what you do on your placement can be quite varied. So when I was in my placement, I did a study looking at sort of the reasons people exit the industry. So mine was quite nice. I had this complete project which I sort of oversaw and then presented back at the end. But I know that other people had different aims with their placements. So that's sort of essentially what it is. You get this intense 2 weeks, which is really, really good fun, and then you go off and do your 8-week placement.
So let's talk about once you've completed that development programme, what can you go on to do? Are you guaranteed a job at the end of it, for example? Molly?
So jobs aren't guaranteed at the end of it, and that's clearly stated in the programme. But again, it's, I suppose, what you make out of your opportunity while you're on your placement. So fortunately enough for myself, I stayed on in the National Stud. I was offered a job at the end of my placement here, which I gladly accepted. But a few people from my course have stayed on in their placements. So my friend in Great British Racing, she's been given a job permanently there as a marketing executive. But other people did their placement and went on to seek other opportunities. So yeah, it's really, I suppose, what you make of it, but it's the connections that you make while in your placement. And then the Careersinracing also update their job board regularly.
And Ellie, what about your experience? Has it been similar to what Molly described there?
Yeah, as Molly said, you're not guaranteed a job at the end of the placement, but there are quite a few people from my cohort that did stay on with the company they were working for. A few stayed at the British Horse Racing Authority in their roles there. And another friend, Freya, she did her placement with the racing manager, and she's still there now as their head of customer relations. So, I think if there is a vacancy and a business need at the time of your placement, then it's a great opportunity, to sort of show your value, and people do stay on in their placements. Again, not everyone did. Some people went on to other roles within the racing industry. I actually, once I finished my placement, stepped back out of the racing industry. I went and completed another graduate programme at media agency, so sort of building up my CV in that media communications area. And then 10 months later, I came back into the industry. I started a role of marketing coordinator at Darley. So I think, like Molly said, it's really it's what you make of the opportunity and the contacts that you make while you're on the course. I definitely think that stood me in strong stead when I then interviewed at Darley. I had the BHA development programme on my CV. I'd sort of shown that stepping stone into the industry, and then built on sort of the marketing side of it outside of the industry. So, there's plenty of opportunities when you finish the course, a variety of opportunities, even if you don't carry on in the racing industry straight away, which a lot of people do. I definitely think it helped me sort of build the career I've got now in the industry.
So you mentioned there how you stepped out of the industry. You then stepped back into the industry. So you had that break to build up those skills in that area and to bulk up your CV. Yeah. What made you come back into this industry?
I think, like I said, I've always had that interest and that love of horse racing and horses. I think the development program, you know, gave me a taste of the industry, and I fell in love with it really. So although I did step out to sort of build my CV up, you know, I definitely, having done the course and loved it so much, you know, I wanted to then build my career in racing. You know, I think that you spend so much of your life at work that you might as well try and find something you enjoy and something you're passionate about. So yeah, I would definitely say that, you know, although I did step out, it wasn't going to be a long-term thing. I think once the course had sort of ignited that love of racing, and shown me, you know, the breadth of careers that I could have in the industry, I was always going to come back at some point. So
You both mentioned networking, connections. How important is that within this industry? Molly?
Huge. I can't quantify how important it is, because it's such, while it's a big international industry, everyone, you find it's very small, like it's 6 degrees of separation. Everyone knows everyone knows somewhere in each corner of the world, so it's really important to kind of build up your network, give yourself a good reputation, and then, because that opens opportunities everywhere. And I mean, your reputation means everything, I think, in this industry, so it's important to kind of keep it to a high standard, and yeah, make as many connections and networks as you can while you're young, just to build yourself up really.
And how does the development programme allow you to make those connections? Is there like social events? How do they help?
Yeah, so well, first of all, just even for the 2-week course, all the lectures that you're exposed to, like from like handicapping to how racing is funded. There's so many, I suppose, highly commended lectures that come in. So it's, I suppose, getting their numbers, their emails, if you have any questions to ask them. Like all of the lecturers were very approachable and knowledgeable in their areas, so that was really good. And then I suppose, again, your cohort, like just keeping connection with them and see how they're doing, that's really important. And then I suppose your placement you go into as well, that's another abundance of networking and connections you make there. So, and then there are events. So recently, it was the finale of the Flat in Newmarket. Careersinracing hosted kind of like I suppose a reunion. So I was there and I got to meet a few of my friends, and then also, I suppose, past pupils from various years. So that was a great little networking opportunity.
So we spoke there about connections, networking, having lecturers come in, those events and all of that, bits and bobs, which sound fantastic, but you would need a level of confidence to do that. And you would need to kind of know yourself to approach those people and to introduce yourself. If you are self-conscious or not as confident, or maybe you don't feel that you're as able in a certain area, is there someone to help you?
Yeah, there is. So we have a mentor in place through Careersinracing, through the development program. So mine was Michelle, and she was available on hand to answer any questions. If I maybe didn't quite understand something, that she might help me, or she could ask the questions. Luckily, I didn't suffer with lack of confidence, so I was okay. But I also think the group we have is so close knit that you actually don't feel like, not ashamed to ask questions, but it's a very open environment that you can ask questions. And again, the lecturers are more than happy. Like, there's no such thing as a stupid question with them, which was great. I suppose the more questions asked, the more, I suppose, conversation based it was, rather than asking an individual question. So that was, I think, a highlight of it actually, is the access to information was really good.
That sounds really nice, because not every environment is like that. Do you think the industry is like that too, as a whole?
Yeah, it is. I think the more you look into it, I think the more, especially with the younger generation, everyone wants to help them, because I suppose it's all about retaining people in the industry. So a lot of people are more than happy to give up their time to answer any questions, or even if you want to go out in a yard for a day and just shadow like a head lad or anything like that. I think once you put out that you are willing to learn and that you want to gain as much experience, people are more than happy to take you on and I suppose, take you under their wing and teach you everything.
Ellie, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely I would. I think, you know, I think once you found the area you're interested in, I know plenty of people on our course followed up with the lecturers with questions afterwards. Just echoing what Molly said, actually, I think some of the most interesting parts of the lectures were the discussions we had afterwards, and, you know, the opportunity to ask questions. And yeah, I think the industry as a whole, I think people are really keen to see, you know, young people, anyone really, succeed in it. So I think once you found the area you're interested in, if you can, you know, I think we touched on sort of mentors within careers in racing, but, you know, I think you can sort of find your own mentors really and sort of ask people if they're happy to mentor you. I think it really helps to have someone to bounce ideas off, you know, ask questions. I know they say there's no such thing as a silly question, but you need to try and find someone that you've got that relationship with that you can ask those questions. So, yeah, I would definitely say as an industry, you know, people are keen to welcome people into it, keen to see them succeed. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, it's pretty welcoming, and yeah, people are keen to help.
So Ellie, tell me about a time where you faced a challenge whilst doing the British Horse Racing Development Programme.
So to be honest, I think I was, you know, I wouldn't really say I faced any challenges on the course. You know, I really loved it. I think perhaps something that could have been challenging for a few people on the course was, you know, that the fact that they're moving away from their home or wherever they were located at the time. So, you know, there's people coming to London and placements in Cheltenham, etc. So you've got to find accommodation for that 8-week placement. But again, you know, the team at Careersinracing are really supportive, and I think anyone that did have issues, they helped them through that. But yeah, I would say, you know, I didn't really face any particular challenges on the course.
Did you, Molly?
No, I suppose I was lucky enough I didn't. But again, the support systems in place were second to none. So, I mean, everyone was just a phone call or an email away, and they'd try your best to help you out. So, no, lucky there was no challenges faced.
So Molly, we spoke about networking and connections. How helpful can people be?
I suppose the best thing about this industry is how helpful everyone is and how everyone wants you to succeed, especially with young people, and I suppose retaining them in our industry, because without the staff we won't have an industry. So all trainers are very welcoming to people to come into their yards and shadow head grooms, or just see how yards are run on a day-to-day basis, or even in stud farms. They just want, I suppose, involvement, and if you show eagerness to learn, they'll take you under their wing any day.
Ellie, what's the best part of the development programme?
I would say it's hard to pick one part, really. I think the things that really stood out for me, one is the people that I met on the course. Some of my closest friends now are people that I did the course with. You know, I used to live with one of them when I first came to Newmarket. So yeah, I would definitely say the people that you meet. I think it's a unique thing, really, to be in the company of so many people that share an interest of yours. You know, regardless of the background they've come from, they're all going to be interested in racing. So, you know, to be in that environment is great, and it's a great foundation for friendship. And yeah, I would say that's definitely one of the highlights for me. And I would just say sort of the breadth and the variety on the course. I think, you know, some of the visits that we got to go on were incredible. I remember going round Dalham Hall Stud, which, you know, is an incredible place to visit. Wouldn't ever imagine a year later I'd be working there, you know. So I think it's it just sort of ignites that interest in you, and ignites that wonder, and sort of, you know, shows you the variety of careers available. So you know, I definitely don't think I would be here, you know, in the job I'm in now, had I not done the course and seen them, got a taste for the jobs available in racing.
Anything to add, Molly?
I agree. I mean, the visits we did during the 2 weeks, I mean, we got to go to Sir Mark Prescott's, we got to see Alpinista work up Warren Hill, I mean, and then, I mean, we all backed her anti-post to win the arc, and that turned out really well. So, no, it was great. Like, to pick such a prolific trainer's brain for the morning was second to none. It was such a great opportunity. But yeah, I mean, they were all really well thought through, all of our lectures, and the yard visits. It really summed up the whole industry in 2 weeks. It was brilliant.
And to end this episode, I'd like to hear from both of you. One favourite thing, I know it's going to be hard to choose one favourite thing about working in this industry. Molly, you can go first.
I suppose the family you grow in this industry, people that you probably wouldn't know on a regular basis, but it's the interest and it's the love of the industry that brings you together, and I think they're the friendships that you'll have for the rest of your life.
Ellie, your turn.
I think I would agree with Molly. I think it's like I touched on before. I think everyone in the industry, you've got a common interest, so there's always going to be common ground between you. So, and it's a very close-knit industry. You're going to bump into the same people around the sales or racing. So you really do feel like you're part of sort of the family of racing, I suppose, to steal your word. So yeah, I would say that's definitely a highlight of it. And I think at the end of the day, for me, I just love the racehorses. I love racing. I love all the stories behind it. So yeah.
Ellie and Molly, thank you so much for your time today, and best of luck for your future careers.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening or watching the Race to Your Career podcast, brought to you by the British Horse Racing Authority. Make sure you head down to the description where there's plenty more information and helpful links. And don't forget to listen or watch the rest of season 1.